This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in to the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. This is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm Eric Balkman. You know me from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, and, of course, the FFPC as well. So thrilled to be here. Glad you're hanging out with us tonight, taking it in as we are entering, and this you'll see a mention in the FFPC email tomorrow from me. Locked players will start happening this week with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. If you drop them in one of the national contest leagues, Main Event, FantasyPros Championship, etc., they will be locked for the remainder of the season. So another level of strategy comes in to try to win that $1 million grand prize. If you are already playing for the $1 million grand prize in both the FantasyPros Championship and the FFPC Main Event, congratulations to you. But that doesn't mean that you can stop there. You can get into plenty of the weekly action we have by going to myffpc.com to play in the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You just choose 10 players if you want to play without kickers and defenses, or 12 players if you want to play with kickers and defenses by Sunday's kickoff at 1 p.m. and just watch them ride through the weekend's games. Remember, only one player per team. There is no stacking in this competition. And you can enter for as little as $35. You can win up to $2,500. So remember, you're going to myffpc.com, myffpc.com to play that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and click that notification bell at the bottom so you never miss a time when the FFPC goes live. And as we head throughout the rest of the season, we're going to be going live not every single night, but we're going to be going live a minimum of 3 times a week. RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown, 10 o'clock on Tuesday nights. The High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network is here at 7 o'clock Thursday nights. And, of course, the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour goes live at 10 o'clock Friday nights. Let's get to a former guest of the HSFF Hour. He is tonight's RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown guest, a guy that's achieved a lot of success in a short period of time here in the FFPC, a player that for a while, 3 years ago, for a certain portion of the season, had a top 10 team in the FPC as well as a top 10 team in the FFPC Main Event. Right now, he's in the top 40 in the FFPC Main Event. We're going to bring him on tonight so he can tell us all about it. Please welcome onto the program. You follow him on the X at Bill Wanke. Welcome in, Bill Wanke. Bill, thanks so much for jumping aboard tonight.
Hey, Balky. Hey, thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We had fun last time you were on 3 years ago, which is too long to go without you having to come on the show. So I'm glad we can make it happen tonight. Now, I just mentioned that at the top of the show that you are in, I think, 37th place in the main event right now, but you are not the only one that is in 37th because you have a collection of co-owners. Tell the listeners how this is working.
Yeah, so this is a group of college buddies. So it's college guys, roommates, and friends and housemates. But more importantly, we had a intramural football team. So intramural football was really big back then, and that was it. And the name of our team was Toxic Waste. So the guys are all. So we were in. And what we're kind of really hoping is that, like, we can piggyback on the Buffalo-related karma. Like, so, the Go Bill guys got there twice, and hopefully they can get off and let another Buffalo crew kind of ride on it.
I saw Sean Stutzman, and I think I saw Don Barani. I didn't really talk to him a whole lot, But I saw Sean Stutzman and Mike Costantino in Las Vegas, and both times I brought it up with them. There is a chance, there's a non-zero chance you guys could three-peat in the main event, and immediately both of them just shut me down. There will be no three-peat this year. It's not going to happen. Yeah. But that's not to say we can't have 3 consecutive champions that have connections to the Buffalo area.
That could be the hope. That's the hope.
That's the hope. That's the hope indeed. All right. So let's get into this tonight. And I want to stay on the Buffalo tip. So Josh Allen last night was not good. And they lost the Bills. Well, they didn't lose. They fired their offensive coordinator in Ken Dorsey this morning. You have an interesting decision going forward here because you have a quarterback that really hasn't played at all this season up until last week when Kyler Murray came back and looked all right doing it, doing so in his return. Josh Allen has good rushing ability. Kyler Murray has good rushing ability. What's the conversation been like when you guys are talking about potentially benching Josh Allen because of his poor play for a guy like Kyler Murray going forward? What's the level of concern for Josh Allen right now?
So literally we have not talked about it, right? So, and maybe for the audience, it's helpful to get to how do you get to here? So we had Josh Allen, right? And so I had elite quarterback in the draft, didn't draft a backup quarterback. That would be my usual MO. I'd rather have scratch off lottery ticket guys who might turn into something early in the season, right? So just kind of standard way. We ended up picking up Matthew Stafford, though, early as our backup when, they were running hot and they were doing it without Cooper Kupp. So he looked like he had upside. He was going to be a good backup. So had him. Then we get to week 9, right? Before week 9, injuries hit. Stafford's hurt. Guys are getting knocked out. A lot of pressure coming in for the quarterback's going to be there. So now we're looking around at, all right, what are we going to do? So Kyler was still floating around. Wanted to get Kyler, look at Kyler, because he was the only guy left with any kind of upside. Mostly, Zach Wilson's out there, kind of those guys. There's not much upside. But Kyler's got upside. And in particular, he has upside in the sprint. He's got a couple good matchups. And in particular, his week 17 matchup is awesome. So if we needed a leverage pivot off of Josh in week 17, that was the idea. So the idea was to get him there.
Right. And at this point, you guys aren't looking at Josh Allen as a bench candidate. Okay.
No.
Right. And then and the legs, his rushing ability's got to factor into that decision, right?
Exactly. And so, you haven't seen Kyler. You don't at the time we got him, you haven't seen Kyler. We picked up Derek Carr for the week 13 bye problem. Because again, we haven't seen Kyler. So I didn't want to go in naked with that. And Kyler doesn't have a great matchup week 13. So the plan was ride with Allen, Carr in week 13, have insurance with Kyler and a potential week 17 pivot if we need or want it. And then, like you say, then last night happens, right? And then this morning happens. And so now you're sitting there looking at it, it's okay, we've seen Kyler. Kyler looked like Kyler with passing rust. I mean, he barely missed Marquise Brown on a bomb. He looked great, right? So he looks like he could be legit. So now it's okay, what do you want to do this week? We saw what Denver did when they took away Diggs. And then Buffalo offense just basically imploded on themselves, right? But they moved the ball great. They were moving the ball. When you look at the peripheral metrics on whether they had success rate, it was fine. Their offense was fine. Turnover, the turnover rundown, right? Hit Gabe Davis in the hands, off his hands, pick, right? Fumbles one of the handoffs. And then you had the second interception, which was basically Zach Wilson invades Josh Allen's body and he throws a ball he should never throw in a situation he should never throw it, right? So why he would do those things, I don't know. The only thing must be Zach Wilson took over, then saw it and threw it, right? So there's no excuse. So, I mean, Josh Allen in the end is fine.
What about keep going.
But coming into this weekend, right? He doesn't have a great matchup, right? So he's against the Jets. Between Sauce and Reed, they're going to take Diggs away best they can. So then Josh Allen's going to be chucking to Gabe Davis. You don't want that. Dalton Kincaid doesn't get a great matchup either. So in the end, it's not a great matchup, right? And Kyler's is actually pretty good. But, to me, the way I'll end up playing is we'll wait for the projections, so like don't have any kind of final projections now. Their team implied total is still good. It's like 23.5. So my expectation is Josh will still project better, but then we still have any kind of news that happens between now and Sunday, weather, because it's Buffalo, right? Like you got to be dealing with that. So I think come Sunday, my expectation is we're starting Josh, but like if the weather turns worse right now, it looks like it's supposed to rain, which is not a big deal. But if it's going to start blowing too, then it may get close. And the way I would typically look for that is if the point total starts to fall, right? So if the implied total starts dropping, then it's a serious thing.
What about guys like you who you were just talking about, guys like Diggs, guys like Kincaid, Gabe Davis, the level of Buffalo's play right now, does that have you concerned at all potentially about benching any of those guys against the Jets? I guess the only guy I'd really consider is Gabe Davis. I mean, I'm still rolling out Diggs and Kincaid, but what about you? And we'll bring James Cook into the conversation as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you got it right, Balky, right? It's like you're 100% rolling out Diggs and Kincaid. If you've been rolling out Gabe Davis, you're in a bad spot. Your life sucks. So, like good luck to you. You're already dead. So if you're rolling him out, you have a problem, right? And like Khalil Shakir, he's really kind of a spot guy if you're really in a bad spot, and he has a good matchup. And this is not a good matchup, so you can't roll him out either.
I want to get back to to the draft, this main event draft that you put together back in drafting season, and I looked at the middle part of the draft, roughly just right above the middle part of the midpoint of the draft. You did something very interesting that reminded me of the NFL draft this past year. 4 wide receivers go right in a row in the NFL draft. I don't ask me the order, but Addison, Smith-Njigba, Johnston, and Flowers. In this draft, you guys end up getting 3 of those 4 receivers, and you also took them right in a row. Addison, Smith-Njigba, and Johnston. The only guy you didn't get was Flowers. Why did you guys emphasize this year's rookie wide receiver class so much there for this specific team build?
So it's probably helpful for the audience, to get a little view of the team build too, though. So we were drafted out of the 6th hole. We get Tyreek, right? So now we get started there, right? We were either going to get the 5 decided he wanted Eckler. Fine, we'll take Tyreek. It could have gone the other way, and we'd have a completely different build. Because when I go into it, I'm not deciding what I want to do, what structure I want, or what guys. I'm going to wait and let it come to me a little bit. But I do have preferences, and so I prefer to go 0 or hero RB if I can. I prefer for the FFPC based stuff, the tournament ones, to get an elite quarterback and an elite tight end if I can. I'd much rather those builds than trying to Frankenstein something, which you can do in a regular league, but when you get to the sprint, when you get to the point chase in weeks 15 through 17, it's just hard to make that happen because one of the tight ends is going to go off, one of the quarterbacks is going to go off, and you just can't make that up with a patchwork of guys. It's just not going to work. So I prefer to do that. So we ended up grabbing Tyreek. We got Mark Andrews came around, and we got Josh Allen because Josh Allen's available. We're from Buffalo. We rode him last year. We're riding him again. So then in the 4th round is really the decision point. Are we going to go a hero or B type thing, or what are we going to do here? And so none of the wide receivers I liked at that point. Amari didn't fall. Debo didn't fall. Keenan sometimes fell. He didn't fall. So we ended up grabbing Breece Hall. Now when it wraps back in the 5th, the idea was okay, typically that would have been Breece as a hero and then just go. But Kenneth Walker got there. So he usually wasn't getting there. And so literally, if you look at the draft board, you'll see we timed out on that because we queued Kenneth Walker and D-Hop. So we were trying to decide, did we want to go and kind of get the pairing RB to go with Breece, because Breece was going to be light early in the season. Kenneth Walker was probably going to have a full role early, even if Charbonnet was going to get him late, now maybe he is. He wasn't early. So it was a perfect match. So we kicked that around and ultimately timed it out and ended up picking up Kenneth Walker. So, and then now it's time picking up wide receivers.
Right.
So
yeah.
it was Terry McLaurin, Addison was a value there. Jackson Smith and Jigba was going in the 7th. We got him in the 8th. We grabbed Quentin Johnston. So we were just trying to grab as much value at wide receiver as we could. And it happened to be the rookie guys. And I'm happy taking the rookie guys because they typically have more upside and breakout in those middle rounds. So I was fine taking those guys.
And how much, like, historically, Bill, when you guys are drafting teams, when you get to those mid rounds, I mean, do you historically put more of an emphasis on rookies because you're looking for the pick to win type guys at that point?
Absolutely. Like the rookie middle round guys have much better breakout profiles than where they exceed like their ADP value. So yeah, definitely we're looking there. I mean, the miss, like when I look at the board, but I look at it back at it now, it's like, could have had Mike Evans. Like, so that would have been kind of sexy, but like didn't take Mike Evans. Yeah, we went with the young guys.
Let's talk about this here. The Sam Laporta draft pick, a player that I do have a good number of shares of him this year, which I'm really happy about, but I wish I had more. It's always one of those things you want to get greedy. You wish you had more. In this specific draft, 16th or 15 tight ends went off the board before you guys took him here. Can you tell us a little bit about what, and you can include yourself in this because you waited on him along to take him as well. What did we in the fantasy industry as high stakes players, what did we miss on Sam Laporta this year that we let him slip so far, especially in tight end premium scoring, which is insane? And then how can we avoid doing that when we're faced with decisions like this next year to make sure a premium talent like this, we just don't let him slip?
So I think the thing here, so I'll tell you what happened to us, right? So we drafted Andrews. The plan was not to take another tight end, literally not going to draft another one. We were just going to keep going. But I wanted Laporta. I just never could get him. And then he fell to us. Literally, he was going in the early 9th. He came back to us in the 10th. So he usually went tight end 13. He was tight end 16 here. And so I remember we were talking on like online because we had a couple guys here and one on FaceTime in. It was like Laporta, right? Like got it, like right. So yeah, like we would ordinarily take like another wide receiver or something, but I was like, no, take on Laporta. And I think though, to answer your question about what was missed is the narrative is rookie tight ends don't fare well, like they underperform. And it's not just a narrative, like there's real data. The data says rookie tight ends don't hit their ADP particularly well. But mostly that's because rookie tight ends don't get on the field. Like playing NFL tight end is really hard. You have to kind of be a lineman and you have to be a receiver. And like learning both those jobs is like a hard thing to do. And so guys don't get on the field. So you draft some guy based on his ultimate talent, but in year one, he's like stuck, like learning the job. Like it's a good example right now is Michael Mayer was like getting drafted and he has tremendous amount of talent, but like he's sharing snaps with Austin Hooper, right? And probably because he's not blocking as well, right? And again, I'm not like a big football guy, but he doesn't have the full role. He may start getting some of it now, but the first half of the year, Michael Mayer, if you had him, he was dust. And I think the thing with Laporta was, A, he got the draft capital. B, there was nobody else there. And the early camp reports were he's running with the ones. And then the camp reports became he's the only tight end running with the ones. And so now you have a situation where, hey, you think this guy has talent. You'd like to have him, but you got to be worried about he's a first-year tight end, except he seems to be the only guy they're playing. And like he was running with the ones, he was going to get on the field. And lo and behold, that's what ends up happening. I mean, could it have blown up on us? Sure, yeah. I mean, but I couldn't get Laporta in main events or FPC. I have him in cash leagues, but this is literally the only share of Laporta I have in the tournaments.
Remind me again, you have Mark Andrews on this team?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about it blowing up on you. This was like, to me, a extremely high floor, high ceiling pick. Because if Laporta doesn't work out, you're still covered.
Yeah, except that you have the opportunity cost where like so like to know what that trade was in that spot, it's Laporta or Achan.
Oh,
Like
God.
that's who goes there. So like yeah. So it's not like so it was a win, but it's not like there wasn't an opportunity cost issue because Achan was the guy. Like it was literally Laporta or Achan. And it was kind of I never get any Laporta. I get some Achan.
Right. Yeah.
I never get Laporta.
Yes. And that's a great way of looking at it. I feel like I drafted, obviously, Farrell Elliott last time he came on the show, my co-host, the guy who runs the KFFSC. I drafted Laporta a ton. It would have been the weekend before Labor Day when we were drafting live in Louisville. And I feel like that's like when it was like crescendoing, and that's non tight end premium. That's just standard full PPR.
Yeah.
So you could get them cheaper or whatever. But I feel like ever since then, like especially with the Fantasy Pros Labor Day Draftathon, like now all of a sudden you're seeing Laporta rise up and everybody's catching on. Like everybody's got that same information. And then you really saw him take off. But there were some people that got him cheap. And you having Laporta to go with Andrews, I mean, that's been kind of like it's a no-brainer with those two every single week. You're always you're always starting one at tight end and flexing out the other one.
Exactly. And
go ahead.
The people understand like tight end premium is only really important if you have a tight end that can catch 5 or 6 plus balls, right? Like if a guy's going to go 340 and 1 or 340 and nothing, like, yeah, the tight end premium doesn't really matter. But if you have a guy that can catch 5, 6, 7, 8 balls, like, yeah, now you're flexing. Like now you feel good about having him in there every time because he's as good as any wide receiver 3 you could find.
As long as we were talking about Buffalo earlier and we're talking tight ends now, Dalton Kincaid, last 2 or 3 weeks has looked unbelievable. What's the scuttlebutt in Buffalo? Is everybody sort of like, yes, this is what we thought he was going to be from the get-go, and there's no reason for him? I feel like, what did he go for last night? Like 5 for 51, something like that? Which in, again, tight end premium, you're going to take that. But I feel like that was more like a based on how he's been going, that's more of a floor type game for him.
Yeah, so let me help you though. None of us are in Buffalo anymore.
But you guys still pay attention to the Bills, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I guess that would be a better way for me to phrase the question.
No, I'm with you.
So you guys are still you're still following the Bills. You're heavily invested into the Bills. You don't live in that area anymore. What's been sort of like, and quite frankly, this is what I care about more anyway. You and your fellow co-owners, what's been the scuttlebutt on Dalton Kincaid and sort of his rise that we've seen over the course of the season?
So I think the Kincaid thing is almost like the classic rookie year wide receiver, right? He gets drafted. You think he's going to be playing wide receiver, but he's not getting enough snaps, and Dawson Knox is in there, right? Like, and so the emergence of Kincaid happens when, Dawson Knox is out, and now all of a sudden it's only Kincaid, and now you're in like jackpot land. And then you just hope for like rational coaching when Dawson Knox comes back, and it's like, Dawson, thank you, brother, but like, we're riding with Dalton from here. And so that's the hope. But yeah, who are they going to throw to, right? Like if you take Diggs away, you're going to keep throwing to Gabe Davis? No. Like Shakir's fine, but he's like he's a pop gun guy. So fine. So like, no, Kincaid's jackpot right now. Like, yeah.
How do you guys handle, are you handling all the waivers and lineup submissions, or does everybody like sort of like how do you, I don't know if this is a tag team scenario. How do you, when you're managing with multiple players, how do you guys work this out?
Yeah. So this one's an interesting one. So 2 of the guys like to watch football, but like they're not fantasy football guys. It's just like a good excuse to like be able to chat about stuff and kind of stay together. Yeah. The other guy, like he plays and he has a bunch of high stakes, like home league stuff, like pretty high stakes stuff. So he likes to play. He's good. So he and I will usually sync on what's going on. So usually it's just like a quick text on, I'm thinking this, what are you thinking? Or I'll usually, I'll drive with the mouse, like I'll drive and I'll put the framework stuff in for the bids. And then he'll text me, say, hey, I saw this. Like, did you think about this guy? What do you want to do about this guy? So we usually just kind of do it that way.
Got it.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because you're always having oversight, which is more eyes on it is always, not always, but almost always a good thing. This past Sunday, waivers went off, or the fab went off on Sunday morning. You guys ended up grabbing Rashad Bateman on this team. He goes with these young receivers that you have on the squad. What do you sort of foresee happening with Baltimore? I feel like they're definitely a Super Bowl contender this year, but the offense has changed, not only from last year, but I think it's been changing throughout the season. Zay Flowers was hot for a while, and now he's backed off a little bit. I think he came back a little bit in 5 for 70 or whatever it was this week. But Bateman is coming on. You're having Keaton Mitchell, the rise of Keaton Mitchell in the backfield as well. How does Bateman figure into all this going forward?
So what I was doing in general was I was grabbing Bateman on Thursday night. So I was grabbing a bunch of Bateman on Thursday. And the reason was I follow a bunch of guys. I don't do any of my own research, right? So I'm like literally listening, consuming guys. And some of them are really good, right? So, Nathan Wanke, so I give him his shout out since I got this stuff from him. On PFF, he does his immediate takeaways, lays out all the snaps, and then with the detail of who's running in what formations. And so he had flagged early that Bateman all of a sudden was now getting 2 wide receiver sets, and Odell was just like basically going in the slot. So like it had been where basically Bateman and Odell were kind of sharing a role, but it had kind of looked like he might be moving to his own. At the same time, Matt Harmon from Reception Perception flagged that like in his video reviews of like looking at the routes, that Bateman looked like the old Bateman, because he was coming off an injury. And so he had flagged that he looked sharper, like he just looked better. And so those kind of things were coinciding where the snaps were showing up different. And somebody who looks at the video and actually knows what they're looking at is identifying something different. And I'm like, hey, I want an upside swing here. And and again, kind of looking at the tournament phase, Baltimore, Miami, week 17, that could just go nuclear. And if, having a guy that leverages different than other guys might have would be perfect. So, for me, it was a matter of here's a guy, and how the FFPC stuff works. Once you see it, then it's going to be so costly to go get him that it's going to be really hard, right? So I was grabbing him on Thursday. This team I didn't on the toxic waste. I didn't because we were holding leaving the light on for Jonathan Mingo. So we had Mingo. There was some hint coming out of the bye that maybe he was getting an increased role. But then after watching the game, it's like, yeah, he's not getting open. Nobody's getting open. Bryce Young's not going to this is just not going to work. He's not the answer. So then shut the light off on Jonathan Mingo and grab Bateman for $1 on Sunday morning.
And this is, to your point, Bateman was not like a 1 or 2 league thing. You were grabbing him everywhere you could that you could afford the roster spot.
Exactly.
Is he more would you do this in a cash game too, like a closed 12-team league? Or is he more of a play for the FantasyPros Championship in the main event because of that championship round sprint at the end of the season?
No, I grabbed him. I'd have to check for sure, but I'm pretty sure I grabbed him in a cash. I was basically where I was swapping out Mingo, or something. I would then it's just yeah, I'm done with that. I'm done with Mingo. If he comes back and he goes nuclear, you guys could all come back to this and laugh at me. But I'm no. I'm done. Turn off the lights. Party's over. Let me get Bateman. Let's see. He may not be it either, but I'm gonna see if that goes.
But to your point, now is the time to pick him up because he's not costing you a premium price. It's like all those people that picked up Demario Douglas a week or two ago. Right? Keaton Mitchell's another perfect example of that, where you're paying through the teeth once they demonstrate it out on the field. When at the time I sent these questions to you, I thought we were really onto something with this Michael Carter thing in New York, and I wanted to get a take on it. And then roughly about 6 hours ago, we get the news from Adam Schefter that Michael Carter's unemployed. He's no longer a New York Jet. He was cut today. So a couple of things here. What's the takeaway here? Dalvin Cook, is he the only Jet running back you're concerned about? If you have Breece Hall, or quite frankly, even if you don't have Breece Hall? Or is this more of a sign that hey, maybe I should start bidding on Izzy Abanikanda? Maybe he's getting close And that's why the Jets were comfortable releasing Michael Carter. As a high-stakes fantasy owner, how do you attack this Jets backup running back situation, Bill?
So the first thing was like I saw that around 4 o'clock or something. I thought I started to die. Like I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
So because what half the answer I was going to share with you is still true. So the half of the hey Michael Carter, Dalvin Cook thing, like why did I go with Michael Carter was the reality was, hey, if Breece Hall goes down and you have to start one of those guys, you were in a bad way.
Yes.
Like this is not good for you. The reason that I had, so you say, well, okay, Bill, like, then why do you have him? The reason I had him was because a couple weeks ago, I'm looking and I have Breece Hall and I have Kenneth Walker. Like, that's great. However, I also had Jerome Ford, who had just like had a high ankle sprain. Those usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. We have Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard, like they were coming out of bye. Miles Sanders was going to be healthy. We hadn't heard anything from Frank Reich yet about like Chuba's basically our guy and Miles is dust. But like at the time, I didn't have that. We have Tyler Algier, who was like in my mind was an early season play, only a matter of time before Arthur Smith would finally play Bijan, right? And so I'm looking at this and going, oh my God, if like Reese goes down, like I literally have to go to the waiver wire to go grab a guy. And when you go to the waiver wire looking for a running back, it just laughs at you, right? Like there is nothing there. It is a barren wasteland. And it's just like find some guy projecting for 3 points and hope he gets 6, right? So I got Michael Carter, right? So to me, that's the only reason I really had him. I thought Michael Carter's just a guy. Dalvin Cook, I think, is probably dust.
Yeah.
And so then we see this and it's like, all right, what the heck is going on? I suspect we'll hear more like stuff will come out because it's just hard to imagine that like the answer to this was cut Michael Carter. Because if you were just going to back off snaps for Michael Carter and play Dalvin Cook, you could have just done that. You didn't need to release the guy. If you wanted to play Izzy, like you could have just done that. So my guess is there's some drama behind this with like guys chirping and like Salah probably just finally said, I'm going to have 2 guys just chirping about snaps. Like one of you guys is leaving and Aaron likes, I'll make this up. Aaron likes Dalvin. So like, we're staying with him. So, but the other possibility is like, yeah, and we're going to play Izzy. So,
all right. So I want to bring this up because I'm just finding this out now. And Pro Football Talk had this like about a half hour ago. Apparently, the Jets called a players only meeting today. And I don't think it was because of, the emotionally move past this Michael Carter release, but I think you're right. I think there was something there. And I also, maybe I'm wrong on this. Wasn't Michael Carter complaining about touches or snaps or playing time earlier this season?
Yeah.
Like this was not something that, so like when I saw that he got released, that was my first thought. My first thought was like, oh, I got to rewrite this question for Bill tonight.
Oh no, it was a perfect question actually, just as a different answer.
And my second point was like, man, I wonder if this was like behavior or attitude based, and more will come out about it. We'll see who claims him off waivers because I got to believe somebody will at this point.
Exactly.
Sticking with running backs here, I brought this up with several guests on the various cacophony of FFPC shows so far this season, and I haven't really got a solid answer on it. I don't expect you to give me one either because I think it's a very nuanced discussion that doesn't probably have one solid answer. But what happened to Tony Pollard this year? And is there another running back that you could think of? And I know this is kind of unfair because I'm asking you to look forward to next year. But is there another running back that you could see the caution flags going up for him when we get to drafting season next year in the same vein as Tony Pollard, a guy that we had very high hopes for based on his ADP, but it just hasn't been there this season?
Yeah. So first of all, I am overweight Tony Pollard. I was overweight during best ball and I'm overweight in redraft. And I don't regret the decision to do that one bit. Like, and here's why, right? Tony Pollard had demonstrated to us that like he could break slates. Like he could throw up 30 balls on limited usage. And now the runway had cleared, right? No Zeke, no nothing. Like the guy was a tremendous talent. We had seen it at the NFL level. Like I said, he could throw up a 30 ball in a heartbeat. And so he's literally the kind of a player who could bury you. If you had no Tony Pollard, there could be a universe right now where we're talking about Tony Pollard with RB1 numbers, like overall RB1, right? Like, would you be shocked if we would at the beginning of the year, we said, hey, we're going to meet week 10 and talk about Tony Pollard? Yeah, we're going to talk about Tony Pollard being RB1, right?
Exactly. Wouldn't have surprised me at all. In fact, Dave Terpoli, who helps cover the FFPC live draft, he was saying this last year. If they could get Elliott out of there, Pollard could be the number 1 overall running back. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. So he could bury you. So to me, the fact that like he had tremendous talent, he had going to have increased usage and role, was going to be in a good offense. We had seen it before. He could be the man, right? In terms of the warning signs, yeah, there were a couple, right? Like, so first of all, offensive changes, right? So they changed offensive coordinators, and Mike McCarthy went on the we're going to establish it thing, right? So, even he says he's going to establish it, even though they had a higher rush rate over expectation that like, I think he was like 25th in the league. So they were like a high rushing team, but like he was going to establish it even more. So that's kind of scary, right? Like we knew what Tony Pollard's usage looks like with Kellen Moore, and it was awesome, right? And so now we don't know, right? Like with the new coaching staff. The second thing is he was coming off a significant injury. Like we as fantasy guys fall into this all the time. Guy gets hurt and it goes into the offseason and you forget all about that. And you think he's going to come back and he's going to be the same guy. He's going to be fully healthy and the same guy. And like, they're not always. Like these guys are like elite thoroughbred horses, right? Like if they get nicked up just a little bit sometimes, they're just not the same animal. Like they're just not as fast. They're just not as explosive. So those are the red flags, right? Like you have the change of OC and you have McCarthy, and then and he's coming off injury. So could one of those things go bad? Yeah. So what has gone bad? I don't know. Like he hasn't, like his peripheral numbers have been poor, right? So he's not breaking tackles. He's not getting rushed over expectation. He's not getting what's blocked for him. Like, so it could be a Tony Pollard issue. Also, though, is like the usage issue. Like literally today, I think around 5 or 6 o'clock, Pat Thorman, who does like, rankings and does the ETR rankings, guy's amazing. He put out the data on like his usage, at least in terms of his rushes. Last year, it was 40% between the tackles, 60% out. This year, it's 60% between the tackles and 40% out, right? And in the game last week, where Dak threw, I think, 47 times, dude didn't get a target. Like, he did not get a target.
Yeah.
And so the usage is clearly not the same either. And whether it's not the same because they know he's not the same, I don't know. But the combination is there. So I think, in terms of like next year, like, I don't know, if the guy can literally break the league, you have to have some shares. Like, I mean, like this wasn't a guy where, okay, yeah, he's going to be a 13, 14 point a week kind of guy. It's like, no, he could literally crush you. So I don't think it was a mistake. I think just bad outcome.
Yeah, and Dom Guzzetti, our buddy in the chat, chiming in, leading the NFL with 151 touches without a touchdown. That's Tony Pollard.
Amazing.
You got to believe, and we're into week 10. Well, we're into week 11 coming up here. Got to believe there's going to be some regression in the mean coming there, hopefully, with Tony Pollard here going forward. Speaking of positive regression, man, as a guy who follows the Green Bay Packers, Bill, I'm hoping for some in Green Bay. I brought up several narratives this year. The fact that Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed are actually being more efficient, and it's not close with their snaps on the field compared to the Packers starting receivers and Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. the scuttlebutt in Northeast Wisconsin this week has been Christian Watson. Who's to blame, right? Is it him? Is it Jordan Love? Is it the offense? Is it Matt LaFleur? You know, there's a lot to unpack there. And I think we come back to this question here in a vacuum. The Packers are playing the Chargers this week. If you could only start one receiver against the Chargers from the Packers, would it be Watson? Would it be Dobbs? Would it be Reed? Would it be Wicks? Would it be somebody else?
So I'm going to start the other way and say, like, I know these are your boys, right? So I know this is like
you can listen. There is nothing you can say that will hurt me, Bill. So just give me the raw, uncut truth.
I was just going to get into the boat with you. So I'm a Jets fan. So like I understand how you feel now. I feel this way every year. This is a new experience generally for you.
Yeah.
I understand what you're feeling. Like I think the answer is if you have to start a Packers wide receiver, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Like this is not going to end well for you. And then the actual answer is like, depends upon what you need, right? So if you need a guy to fill in a bye week and just kind of make sure you put up a number because the rest of your team is solid, I'm going with Dobbs because he's getting more in zone looks. Like he's looking to him there. His ADOT's lower. So it's it's more likely he can Love could put an accurate target on the guy. Cause I think the issue is Love, but that would be like a non-football guy. Like I think it's Love. But if you need a big swing and you need something big, then yeah, like throw Christian Watson out there and hope for the connection. But otherwise, I'm probably taking Dobbs.
What scares me the most is how overweight I'm going to be on Christian Watson next year when he, if this season keeps up, he's going to be so depressed in drafts, and I'm going to see that size-speed combination. I'm going to trick myself into believing year two of loving Watson, baby. Here we go, and I'm going to have him on like 70% of my teams.
All right, so let me help you. So I'm like scanning up at the board from this year's team, right? I'm trying to say, okay, who's the comparable? So like Sutton went 3-4 turn last year, and now he went 7-8 turn. That's your boy.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're willing to take him at the 7-8 turn, you're going to have a ton.
Let's get back to we'll get back to the Bills here. Permar99 in the YouTube chat wants to know if he should go ahead and drop Leonard Fournette. Now, I picked up Fournette in more than a few leagues, and I'm assuming you have some shares of him as well. You got to hang on to him for right now just to see what happens, right?
So, I mean, I think to me, it's like if there's a better handcuff option, like I'll take it. So like I said, I do have a few. I got like a few dollar Fournettes, a couple of weeks ago when they signed him to the practice squad. I mean, my guess is Fournette's washed. Like he didn't sign through all the other places where everybody else was looking for a running back and he didn't get signed. So he's probably washed. They haven't promoted him. So probably he's either washed or he's working himself back into shape, right? I'm thinking that mostly it was like Davian Harris insurance, like, that they needed another back. And it wasn't a statement about Latavius, and it wasn't certainly not Cook. So I mean, to me, if there's another guy out there that you want, I think you can drop him.
And I think this, and by the way, you talk about how in shape he was. I'll use this opportunity to share again, which I know I've shared on this show. I have a friend who I went to high school with. She moved down to Louisiana, Baton Rouge area. She worked at a sports bar there. And oftentimes when Leonard Fournette was a member of the LSU football team, he would come in, he'd order the spin dip, but instead of eating the spinach artichoke dip with the chips that they give you, he'd just take a spoon and Ezekiel Elliott, this spin dip. And also a bad tipper from what I was told too. To me, he strikes me as the guy that maybe would take a little bit longer to get into shape.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think that you're like, if you drop him, are you really going to regret dropping him? I'm not so sure you would.
No, I mean, I think the dream was, hey, he comes in right away, steps in, he starts doing something, and he starts getting some passing role. But like, I don't know. Cook, to me, Cook looks good. So I don't think, Lenny has looked that good since, the first Brady year, right?
Right.
So like, I don't think he's going to do it for you.
All right, and to lead into Latavius Murray here, from what we saw last night, what we've seen the last couple of weeks, it almost seems like he started the season having an established role in that backfield, and then that established role kind of dwindled because he wasn't taking advantage of it. He was getting stuffed on short yardage when the Bills would put him out there instead of James Cook, and it's like, well, if you're not doing that, what are you really doing here? But now it seems like it's bouncing back the other way again, based on what we saw Monday night against the Broncos, based on what we saw the last week, 2 weeks now. Is Latavius Murray creeping closer to being flex worthy as a starter, given that James Cook has been kind of underwhelming a little bit, at least as far as a fantasy production standpoint?
So I think Latavius is going to fall into that category of, yeah, if you got to flex him, it's not good news.
It's not good news, right? Yeah,
it's not good news. It's not like you're looking forward to it. And I think you have to look at the game last night was like a one-off, right? The Denver defense, a lot of us are probably anchored on like Miami put up 70 on them. They like suck. Mm-hmm. But the reality is I don't think they suck. And so they've, especially their secondary does not suck, but you can run on them. And so the Bills were in a spot last night where they could just run on them. And they were Cook was running on them, Latavius was running on them, but then Cook dropped the ball right away. Then he got, from a Latavius point of view, then Cook got sent to the doghouse for 16 plays or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so then it was Latavius time. So I think last night was a special case for Latavius. It was a great matchup for running backs. He got a lot more work because Cook was in the doghouse. I mean, with that said, I do think I have a team this week where I might have to go to the waiver wire. And Latavius is probably going to project 6.5 points this week. And that's better than probably everybody else is going to be out there if I got to go.
At a minimum, Murray is an injury away type guy where if anything were to happen to Cook, Murray, you got to put, and yes. Here's the thing too, and you probably noticed this following the Bills, Bill. Buffalo, it seems like they've had opportunities to run the ball, and for whatever reason, and I'm not just talking about this season, I'm talking about several seasons. God, this really turned into a Bills episode. I did not expect this to happen. But they've had opportunities to run the ball, and for whatever reason, they just don't. And some teams are like that. Right? They just don't do what you would think that they would do. And we think, oh, okay, if something happened to Cook, he's not playing this week. Murray's a slam dunk RB1. Well, maybe not necessarily, because you don't know if he'll be utilized like a workhorse running back, but still you got to keep him around to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think you keep Latavius and view him more as a handcuff. Mm-hmm. And if Cook goes down, you're right. He's more like an RB2 type guy, probably a low end RB2 guy.
I have not looked at my waivers yet. I'm actually, after the show tonight, I'm going to start looking at my fab and what I have to do. How do I attack week 11 this week? Do you have any big targets that you're looking at on the waiver wire this week yet, Bill? I know you just mentioned that you might be hurting at running back in a league. Who are some of the players FFPC players should be looking at adding going into week 11?
So this week, as you know, or you haven't looked yet,
I have not. It's going to be close.
It's going to be a desert. So I think this is the kind of week it is. The week it is, hey, who did my league mates drop last week? They had buys, they've lost interest in guys. Go find those guys, because there are some guys out there you'd be surprised to find. And these guys are not big time guys, but they're helpful guys. I have a couple leagues. Kenneth Gainwell's out there. Roshan is out in a couple. It's not, it's one or two, right? Where guys dropped a guy, they dropped McKinnon. Noah Brown's still out there in a couple rounds. Freiermuth is still out there in a couple. Guy dropped Goddard, right? So if you're going to the playoffs and you want a week 17 matchup, Goddard's got the nut matchup against Arizona in week 17 in the sprint, right? So if you're in building for the playoffs and the sprint, spin through the wire and just see, did my league mates drop anybody? Because there were like onesie twosies like available. In general, though, like I think there's like two guys you can think about. I do think you have to take a stab at Izzy.
Yep.
And the reason being is like, and I know you would know this because you've been drafting all year, but some of the audience guys may not have drafted early. Izzy got a ton of buzz before the draft. So
yeah,
in the never too early, he went as high as like the 10th to 12th round. Like right before the draft, he was going round 10, round 12, like straight up, like just taking Izzy Abanikanda. So he was getting a lot of buzz. He was high on Dane Brugler's prospect list. He was up there. Like he had him ahead of Keaton Mitchell, right? So he had him, I think, number 9. His RAS score is like 9.6. The guy's fast and he's big, like big enough. Like he's not very tall, like 5'10", so it's like standard kind of running back height. But he goes like 215 and he ran like a 4.4. So the guy's athletic and he's pretty big, you know, and so like he's definitely worth the flyer on the hopes that he's Keaton Mitchell. Like, and you know, he can get 8 carries a game and take like that. They want to get that load off of Brees. One thing to know, we didn't talk about on the Brees Carter thing was 2 games ago against the Chargers, it was mop up work, but like in the 2-minute type stuff, it was Carter. They left Brees on the side. And as a Brees owner, I was screaming because Carter ended up like catching 6 balls for 34 or something. And it's like
he had like no points.
Yeah.
And like that last drive or whatever it was like, Carter catch.
It was insane, right? And so, but this last time against Vegas, Brees was out there for it, even though freaking Zach Wilson couldn't hit him. But like he was out there. So it may be that like part of the plan is, hey, we're going to get Abanikanda some like rushes, like take that part away, back off the between the 20s rushes with Brees and give him some of those to Abanikanda. And then like, hey, like then we have Brees on all the passing downs. We get to use him in the high value touch spots. And then we have that. But if the guy's a home run hitter, Abanikanda, if he's a home run hitter, you might hit with that. So to me, he's worth a flyer type stash type thing.
And so I've always said football, especially the running back position, Bill, it's a young man's game. There is more juice with Abanikanda right now. There is a higher ceiling with Abanikanda right now than Dalvin Cook is going to see the rest of his career.
So, look, the kid ran a 4.4. He's 20 years old. Like he was an early declare. Like so he's like he was a 3rd-year junior, came out as he's still 20. So like I'm going to take a shot and see what the Jets may have in store. Chances are good. It's one of those I talked about earlier. It's one of those lottery scratch offs, and then you go, oh, loser, and you just throw it away.
And then you cut him. Like, yeah, exactly.
And then you cut him, right? So he's one guy. The other guy I'd be looking at, like on a stash point of view, is A.T. Perry. So
I was just going to ask you about him. This is perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, you know, we get the news. Michael Thomas has got some kind of, I forget how they phrased it, significant injury, like knee injury, right? So who knows what that means? They're on by. We're not going to get a reporting, so you're not going to get any kind of advanced news. But A.T. Perry's another one of these guys. Like at prospect time, he was grading out well. Like Dane Brugler had him well. Like Matt Harmon had him like as like 3rd or 4th round pick. He didn't go until the 5th or 6th. But the dude's 6'3", he can run. Like, you know, okay, like, and you know, I'll take a shot at that. Like you have like the guy's again, he had like a 9.6 RAS score too. So like the dude's an athlete. Like, all right, maybe, and you know, if it's not Carr and it's Jameis, then it's truly jackpot season.
Yes, totally, absolutely.
Because if you can get the Jameis experience with a wide receiver, you are like windmilling it in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's I was like it's weird to say it and it's weird to think it, but like there are so many people that, myself included, sometimes when Winston enters the game, we all kind of like the wind out of our sails a little bit. Backup quarterbacks, and it's Winston.
Oh, no way.
That's an upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
That's an upgrade.
Oh my God.
Like you love to see a guy that's going to, with reckless abandon, you know, pumping like a Brett Favre for this generation. It is Jameis Winston. Like that. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I was watching Sunday with one of my sons. So we're watching, and James comes in, and we have, like, on different teams, we have Olave, and it was like instantly like, oh my God, the Jameis experience.
Right.
Let's go. Let's go.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Is there a player? I hesitate to use the term sleeper, but I will use it for lack of a better term. Is there a player that not a lot of people, let's just say, are probably going to be starting in week 11, Bill, that you think FFPC players need to take a second look at to maybe get him in as a flex? And then a guy that you wouldn't necessarily bench, but you're really nervous about this coming weekend.
So the sleeper thing is hard, right? Because it's like most of the time the guy's just a dust ball. So I'm going to spin it a little bit different. Like, so the guy I'm going to give you is Trey McBride.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but not for tight end. Like, if you have him starting tight end, yeah, that's like, of course. Like, unless you have an elite tight end, you're starting Trey McBride. But like, it's really more a matter of how much can you flex him. Like, I have probably 8 to 10 shares in my managed leagues of Trey McBride. I'll probably be starting him in 8 or 9. And like, I have a couple of like flex spots where, like, am I starting him or Deontay Johnson? Am I starting him or Chris Godwin? Like, I think those are actual questions. Like, and kind of in the spirit of your question is like, that's probably surprising. Like, people are not going to go, like, you'd say, okay, Deontay or McBride. Well, it's got to start Deontay Johnson. Like, I don't think so. Like, I think I'm going to roll out McBride. And so I think the Godwin one is tougher, but like, I don't know. Like, I got to wait for the rest of the projections and news and all that kind of stuff. But come Sunday, I won't be hesitant at all to like make that swap.
Is there and by the way, McBride, I was upset because I can't remember who I got outbid on in one of my KFFSC leagues. And I'm like, now I got to start stinking McBride again this week. And it was fine. Like, I was loving it. This is great. It's just one of those things. Sometimes it happens that way. I said last week, and I was proven correct. I didn't like Derrick Henry. I didn't like his matchup last week. I don't know if anybody listened to me and actually bench Henry, which I'm sure a lot of people wish they would have based on what he did last week. Is there any player like that this week that you're like, boy, I don't think I can afford to not start him, but I'm thinking long and hard about it?
I mean, so the way I end up playing is I'll end up as bad as I feel. I'll close my eyes and hold my nose and follow the projections unless I know better. Like, unless there's something where I know the projection is like got to be off a little bit, like I'll follow them. But like I will give you the scary ones. Like I'll like just for fun. I have a main event team that sounds like it should be crushing, but unless I win the next 2 weeks, we won't get into the playoffs. But if I give you the names, you'll go, wow, that's pretty cool, right? So starting Lamar,
sure,
sounds pretty cool,
yep.
Right? Like, I got Kenneth Walker, I got Tony Pollard, still sounding pretty cool.
Yeah.
Debo, Tylock, right? I got Mark Andrews, I got David Montgomery. He's on bye this week, but last week I started JT. And you sit there and go, how's this team not smashing?
Right. Yes.
Well, it's not smashing because Lamar is scary. Like, so, like, if I had a better option than Lamar, like if I had Kyler in the Lamar, I might swap there. Like, I could see that. I forget he has matchup wise this week, but like, I could see it. And so, each of those guys, Pollard, kind of scary dude. Like, am I going to sit him? No.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
no.
you're gonna keep rolling him out there. Well, like, you got to give him in your starting lineup, Bill, when he scores that first touchdown.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on his 175th carry or something.
Exactly. Let's end it tonight. Actually, two questions. So we'll go to Permar 99 right now. Starting Noah Brown over Calvin Ridley this week. Now that seems wild, but the more I look at it, I'm like, you know what? I don't have a problem with that.
So here's the thing. Like, Ridley definitely shows up on the scary to start list, right? Like, the problem with Noah Brown, I think, is he's splitting time with Robert Woods. And so like it's easy to see, like, so Noah Brown was amazing last week, right?
Mhm.
Like he was just amazing. But like the workload is not, I think, matching the box score. Like I think personally I would not be starting Noah over Ridley. Like just because I think that was more box score based.
Okay.
But they have a great matchup. It could shoot out. Like so, and CJ Stroud has been amazing. Like the kid is like so much fun. So could Permar be right? Could. I personally wouldn't do it just because the usage is. Assuming Nico's back.
I was just going to say that's the other thing we got to.
I'm assuming Nico's back.
If Collins plays, I can't defend the decision. Okay,
but if Nico's out, I get it. Then I get it
totally. This is from Dom Gazzetti. Bill, I have a start sit question. Who's the odd man out here? DJ Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Addison, or Puka Nacua? Now, right. as far as those guys go this week, you have DJ Moore at Detroit. You have DeAndre Hopkins, who is playing against the Jaguars in Florida. Jordan Addison is going to be in the Mile High City playing the Broncos. And then Puka Nacua, who was on bye last week, gets the Seattle Seahawks at home. He's got to bench one of these players. Bill, which one would you bench?
So, you get the conditional here. So if Jetta is back, then I think, that's a lot more where I'd be leaning Addison. Like if Jett is out, like then I don't like that is tougher. I'm starting Puka. Like so
right.
Puka's definitely getting started, right? And if Jett is out, Addison's getting started. And then it's down to like the other two that like a little more, tougher. I'm not
Moore and Hopkins. Yeah. I think
I mean, and like we don't know on DJ Moore if Fields is back, right? Like we don't know yet if Fields
we don't know yet. We don't know yet.
Yeah. No. I mean if it's Bajent, like then I'm going to sit DJ Moore.
I think that's smart as well. So, Dom, the best advice I can give you is to keep
wait till Sunday, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Dom, by the way, is pops in on my Thursday show and our Friday show, so he will be well versed on what's going on with that. And then last one here, we'll go back to Permar 99 here. Quarterback decision that he's facing this week, or she, I should say. I don't know if he or she. Joe Burrow this week. Who is facing the Ravens, right? Yeah, in Baltimore. Or he could play Brock Purdy at home against the Buccaneers, Bill.
I'm never sitting Burrow.
Regardless of the matchup here. Because
no.
you can cut up the Buccaneers pass defense.
I mean, yeah, but the problem with San Fran is they can cut it up a gazillion ways.
That's true, yeah.
Right? And
it could be a McCaffrey game.
And Purdy doesn't get Burrow doesn't either, but Purdy doesn't get any rush equity, right? Mm-hmm. So it's literally if it becomes a Christian McCaffrey game, you got nothing. Like
right.
You could throw to him, those you get those too. But if they rush for a couple, Debo like last week, Debo ran one in, they got that going again. So I would rather just Deshaun Watson put up a number. I mean, Baltimore's good, but
what if T. Higgins is not playing again this week and we get word of that? Is that enough to tilt the scales in favor of Purdy or no?
The only thing would tilt with Jamar. Like Jamar tilts the scales.
Right.
Other than that, I mean, it'd be great to have T, but like Trent, for those spot start guys, like. I had to go grab Trenton Irwin last week for some flex spot.
Got in the end zone. Nice job.
2 for 30 and 1 or whatever it was. Right. It was like beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It as our good buddy Barney Newkirk pointing out, Irwin time last week.
Yeah.
It could be Irwin time again this week, but it'll be against the Ravens. Wow, what a show. I did not realize we'd been talking this long, Bill. Thank you so much for staying a little extra with me tonight. Always enjoy our conversation about fantasy football. And everything going on with the FFPC. I know you've been, and I wanted to touch on this. Congratulations, you're right up at the top of the leaderboard in Terminator. Do you have any? Do you have any regret drops so far this season on that team?
Not on that one. I have 2 others where I have kind of one where I went.
Yeah,
I literally cut Kate Otten I had 3 tight ends, and I had to like one was going. I dropped K-Dot in the week before he went off. It's like,
oh God, that's annoying. That's
that
really
was it was brutal.
But at least you're up there with it with
Oh,
this
yeah.
team, which is good. And you've been and I'll give my read here in a little bit, but you've been supplementing a lot of your season long stuff playing the FFPC Weekly Challenge too. How's that been going for you?
Oh, it's been good. It's been really, really good. I love playing those things. So they're a lot of fun because they have the same format as the playoff challenge, right?
Exactly,
Where
yeah.
you get a guy, and it gives me a chance to be honest, to get some guys that I don't have. So, like, I was unfortunately, I must have at some point gravely offended the random number generator god.
Right.
So I was only getting the back end of the board. So all the front end guys I don't have. So like, I'll play the weekly challenges like, no. Like, I'm going to have CMC shares. I'm going to have all these things. Everybody has CMC shares, but like, oh no, like 100% CMC. I'll usually play like 10 entries, every single one. Like, I'm not pivoting off him ever.
And I always say, I mean, obviously this goes without saying, but like similar to like DFS stuff, it's more fun to build lineups with running backs in the weekly challenge, because that's something that I think you and I are of one mind on this. We historically don't do that in season long. We normally go with receivers or maybe a couple of tight ends. But in a 1 week basis where you're not worried about injuries or injuries, they are what they are. Man, load me up with those running backs on a weekly challenge for sure. Let's end it now, Bill, because we could continue talking deep into the night here about the Bills and toxic waste and everything that's going on.
The waste, exactly.
Congratulations to the toxic waste that is sitting in the top 40 of the FFPC main event here, heading into week 11. Congratulations on all your success so far. Hopefully the ball bounces your way this weekend, and you guys are celebrating with that $1 million check come January, dude.
That's it. The Buffalo three-peat, baby. That's what we're
Buffalo three-peat. That's it. Yeah. You're going to have to rename the team that if it does happen. We'll call it the Buffalo three-peat.
Absolutely.
Bill, always a pleasure. Be good. Talk to you soon.
Take care, Buck.
You got it. Bill Wanke, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the show tonight, 37th place overall in the FFPC main event. That will complete this evening's RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. A lot of fun, and hopefully informative. I just kind of hung out and talked with Bill and hopefully enjoyed the conversation because we're supposed to be doing it for you, but sometimes I forget about that. We will go live again. I want to thank Bill Wanke, by the way, for hopping aboard tonight. We'll go live again next Tuesday at 10 p.m. We're going to talk with Mike Engel, who was, I believe, heading into, I don't know where he is now, but he had a top 20 team in the FFPC main event heading into week 10. We'll figure out where he is, but he's going to be next week's guest on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Don't forget, we go live at 7 o'clock on on the Better Sports Network's High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show Thursday from 7 to 9. It is the perfect way to begin your week of fantasy football, as we'll bleed right in to that Thursday night game. The GOAT District and Player Profiler's own Theo Greminger will be my guest co-host this Thursday. Awesome to have that dude back on. He knows his stuff for sure. And then Friday night, 10 p.m., myself and KFFSC Commissioner Farrell Elliott are going to be joined by, I believe, the second place team, or was the second place team in the FantasyPros Championship. Joe Holmes will be our guest at 10 o'clock this Friday night. Remember, be like Bill Wanke and join the FFPC Weekly Challenge. Just go to myffpc.com to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge, myffpc.com. No draft, no salary cap. Just choose 10 players or 12 players, depending upon if you want to play with kickers and defenses, by 1 p.m. on Sunday, and then just enjoy those points piling up throughout the weekend. Remember, only one player per NFL team, $35 to enter. You can also enter for $200. Either way, you could win up to $2,500. Remember, Permar99 already chiming in on YouTube. Smash the likes. Yes, hit the like button. We certainly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, and then share it with your friends and your enemies, and get notified every time we go live. As I said, next time will be 7 o'clock Thursday night. Be here. We'll talk with you then, and get those lineups set for week 11. And I hope the bidding goes well this week as well for you and your FFPC leagues. Remember, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, those players will be locked in the national contests that we have at the FFPC for the remainder of the season. So if you drop them this week, you can't get them back. We'll send that out in the FFPC email tomorrow as well as a reminder. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a great night. I'm Eric Balkman. Talk with you again soon. Thank you for listening to the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter @RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.